So one of the biggest questions I see, the most common questions I see on Reddit and Facebook, and people contact me is like, I want to become a Buddhist. I want to start studying Buddhism. How do I become a Buddhist? Here's 5 things you need to know about becoming a Buddhist. Okay, so being a Buddhist doesn't mean just reading about it and doesn't mean just acting out, although those are prime things that you'll need to do after you've done a couple other things. Okay, so there's a main thing that we need to do to actually officially become a Buddhist, and that is what's called take refuge. Take refuge, or take guidance as we like to say, is taking refuge under 3 things. Okay, number 1, taking refuge under the Buddha. Number 2, taking refuge under the Dharma, which is a little under here. So there's usually texts underneath these things. And the third one is taking refuge or guidance under the Sangha. The Sangha usually means the Mahasangha, which means the community of monks and nuns. Not really lay people like, 4 or 5 friends, although technically that is what a Sangha is a community of good friends. Good Dharma friends is a very important thing to have. These are people that you can bounce ideas off of, and getting into a community is, I think, a very important thing, as long as you guys can have a place to meet and have some tea and snacks. I used to go to the temple on Tuesdays. I ended up writing an article called Tuesdays with Bhante, because Bhante Chao-Chu was my teacher, and I would write a little article about every week we would spend a few hours together on a Tuesday having tea and toast and talking about current events or working on paperwork that needed to be done, or I would be out doing maintenance on the yard or the temple grounds. And eventually I got so interested, I wanted to actually officially become a Buddhist. So how do you do that? Well, you usually would have to take it with a Buddhist monk. Generally, it should be done in public. Why in public? Because you're actually telling people that, hey, you want to take guidance under those 3 things. Although, what we can do it right now. You can actually become a little bit of a Buddhist, and really officially you're a Buddhist if you do these 3 things right now. Number 1, put your hands together and relax. Calm the mind. And at this point, we want to ask, I take guidance and refuge in the Buddha. I take guidance and refuge in the Dharma. I take guidance and refuge in the Sangha. A second time, I take guidance and refuge in the Buddha. I take guidance and refuge in the Dharma. I take guidance and refuge in the Sangha. And a third time, I take guidance and refuge in the Buddha. I take guidance and refuge in the Dharma. I take guidance and refuge in the Sangha. Sadhu. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Duriyampe Buddham saranam gacchami. Duriyampe Dhammam saranam gacchami. Duriyampe Sangham saranam gacchami. Tariyampe Buddham saranam gacchami. Tariyampe Dhammam saranam gacchami. Tariyampe Sangham saranam gacchami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. There we go. So we just did the 3 refuges 3 times, twice. The reason I did it twice is we did it again in Pali. That was the Buddham Saranam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Buddha. Okay? I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. So we pronounce those things open, and we would like to do it as a thing. It's for ourselves, of course, but we're trying to join a community as well. Generally, that's why we want to do it in public in front of the rest of the community, in front of the monk. Okay? Sometimes you will even get a Dharma name at that point. You don't have to have one. It doesn't mean anything. I've had 2 or 3 because you can get different ones at different places and things like that. Mine happens to be Dhammajivaka, and which means like the good son of the Dharma. And the reason for that, for me getting that name, is because when I took the refuges, and then I took the precepts, and then I became a minister, I took further precepts and further refuge. Now, the precepts is the second part. The second part is we take the precepts, and the precepts are simple. They're guidances again. I refrain from the act of taking a life. I refrain from the act of taking that which is not given. Take the precept to avoid harmful speech. I take the precept to refrain from intoxicants. Now, this one gets a lot of people all wound up too, because intoxicants has to do with anything that dulls the mind or makes you heedless. Medicines can make you heedless. Some foods can make you heedless. And so, but we're taking on the training precept, right? We're looking into it. We're starting to work that, and as we develop wisdom, we're going to see that those things don't work for us. Okay, it doesn't mean you can't have them, but they don't work for you if you're going to take them too much. Everything in a little moderation. That's why it is called the middle path. But in the strictest sense, nothing that's an intoxicant. And the fifth one is I refrain from sexual impropriety or sexual misconduct. Now, what does that actually mean? There's a whole different thing on that one, and that has to do with just don't hurt yourself and don't hurt others emotionally, physically, spiritually, and chemically. Very easy. So those are kind of the things we do to become a Buddhist. Number one, we take the refuges. Number two, we take some precepts as training precepts. Number three, we begin to study in a community, right? We develop a community or come to a community. And that can be, these days, because of the weird things that are going on in the world, we may have to do that only online. Not as appropriate or not as effective, I think, as doing it in a group, because as a group you could all say, like, hey, let's go to IHOP and have some pancakes because we're having so much fun together. And you get deeper relationships with each other. You can't do that on Zoom or on Google meetups or whatever they're called. Even on this is very difficult, because what you would end up doing is say, well, let's go have pancakes. I go my way, you go your ways, and some of us stay home. So what? But the idea is to develop a community. And that's an important thing. We've lost community in the past couple of years. Communities have closed down, and we need to get them back. So this is a great way to do that. So the 1, 2, 3, fourth thing we would want to do, not just have the community, but the fourth thing we would want to do is to begin study. And that means watching some videos, getting some information, having questions. When you question, you can actually get more answers, because you're going to want to look things up more, or at least get some guidance from other people who know, and then start to develop your wisdom to get out of that samsara, that fog of ignorance. Okay, and then the final thing we want to do is we're going to put it into action. And that's going to be the 4 Brahma Viharas, and we're going to be doing some other things like that. If you want to go on the web and look up the cheat sheet I have for being a beginning Buddhist, is www.thecenteredpath.org. Look under downloads, and there's a free 2-page PDF thing you can download, and it gives you at least a little bit of idea of what's going on in those. And you can use them and look them up and take notes and make it your own little class. I've done a few videos on those. We're going to be redoing some of them as well. Don't forget to subscribe and like, because this is what I want to be doing, is more of this. I've done a number of videos now, and we're going to be going deeper into becoming a basic Buddhist, because that's what people want to do. Now, you need to find yourself a community. We can have it online, but I think an in-person community is the most important, because we need to be in contact with other humans and other animals and other beings in the world itself. So we need to get out in the forest and out in the desert and out in the plains and out in the mountains and out in the ocean and out in the lakes and the rivers and all that stuff, and be in contact and be able to see the way the world is, because that's what Buddhism was about. It was about being in the world and being an effective and a good human, and reducing the suffering of yourself and others by following these very basic, pragmatic, and practical precepts and other guides. So there's not much dogma. We'll talk about that too at a later time. Anyway, this is Reverend Sean over the Center Path. You guys go, do your thing. Sit and contemplate about the 3 refuges, right? The 5 precepts, the other things that we have, whatever they are, and use those as your objects of meditation when you sit. That's called vipassana, which is insight meditation. You can sit for a little while in samatha, relax, become really calm, get those brain waves to even out into some theta and alpha, and then go ahead and contemplate, right? That's the way it should work. This is Reverend Sean. You guys take care. I'll talk to you guys soon. That's it.